last week. This is the companion class to that, where we're going to show you how to make some hats that you can get done super quickly for some holiday gifting here. My name is Claire. I'll be hanging out in the chat with you here. Darren is your instructor. He'll be on screen here shortly. He's showing off some of the hats there that we'll make in the course of the class. And I will also go ahead and pop the patterns in the chat there. If you didn't get them in your confirmation email, I'll go ahead and put those in as we get to them. This class does assume that you've got some basic knitting skills. We'll cover them really quickly, but we've got 3 hats to go through, so we're going to go fairly quick. Remember that we are recording, so you'll be able to watch this class back in about 24 hours. Now that that spiel is out of the way, we'll let Darren get started.
All right, welcome to class, everyone. Like Claire said, today we're going to learn how to knit 3 different styles of hats. The very first hat is super easy. So it's a very beginner hat. So if you only have basic knitting skills, then this first hat will be a perfect one to start with. And they get progressively harder as we go to the third one. Now, none of them are very hard. They're just a little bit more that you can learn. So it's an opportunity to learn just a few more skills with each project. And then after you mastered the final project, then you'll be ready to move on to some even more complicated projects, some different types of hats, maybe even some other types of projects as well. So the skills that you're learning today, you'll be able to take forward into your knitting career and really advance some of your opportunities to make some really exciting things. So let's go ahead and we'll jump right in and skip. Let's go to the view of my hands, and then we'll start with the instruction later. Okay. Okay. All righty. So I'm going to be using some wool ease thick and quick today in class as I'm demonstrating. So this is it's wool ease thick and quick by Lion Brand yarn. This is available on either lionbrand.com or michaels.com. This is a number 6 yarn, which is a super bulky, and that talks about how thick the yarn is. So some yarn is very thin like thread, and that would be either a number 0 or a number 1. This is a number 6, so it's quite thick. It works up really fast. And the size needle that it's recommending is a size 13, which is a 9mm. So you could pretty much use any super bulky yarn that you want. Today I am going to be demonstrating and using with some wool ease, and I'm also going to be showing some samples that are made with Hometown Bonus Bundle. So Hometown Bonus Bundle is also available on lionbrand.com or michaels.com. Both of these styles of yarn come in a wide range of colors and color choices. So you're bound to find your favorite color between the 2 of these collections. So if you search online and look at all the different colors available, I think you'll be really excited to see some really great colors, right? The first pattern is called the Lion Brand Hometown Garter Stitch Hat. And this hat uses 1 ball of Hometown and 2 balls of Hometown San Diego Navy. But if you buy the Hometown Bonus Bundle from lionbrand.com or michaels.com, you only need 1 because the bonus bundle is equals 2 of these. So there's an option there. If you wanted to use the wool ease like this one, you could get 2 balls of this to make sure you have enough. All right, so you don't want to run out halfway through. You need knitting needles size 13 and large eye blunt needles for weaving in ends. If you choose to put a pom-pom on that, you can either buy a furry pom-pom or get a Pom Pom Maker and make your own pom-pom. So we're not going to worry about gauge for this beginning project. As long as your gauge is pretty close, it should be fine. And as long as your fabric feels nice for a hat, you don't want it too loose or else it won't be very warm. You don't want it real super tight either, or else it won't feel soft. So you know what a hat should feel like. So as long as it feels pretty good to you, I think you'll be fine. This hat is worked in rows of garter stitch, which is knit every row. Gauge does not matter. Once the stitches are bound off, you're going to have a rectangle, and we're going to seam that into a hat. Okay. So starting with the hat, let's look at this pattern. It's a very simple pattern, so I think you're going to like it. Leaving a yarn tail about 4 to 6 inches long, and we'll need that for finishing at the end. You're going to cast on 27 stitches, work in garter stitch, which means knit every row until the piece measures, when it's stretched out, it should wrap around your head and fit comfortably. So what that means is we're going to knit this hat to be a custom fit for your head. So you can make this hat that'll fit you. You could make this same hat to fit somebody that maybe has a very large head, or you could make this hat for a child that maybe has a smaller head, and following the same pattern, because we're going to kind of double check the size as you're making it. And after you've made the hat big enough, we're going to bind off loosely, cut the yarn, and then we're going to seam it together. So all that is very easy. So let's just cover some quick basics so that we are sure that we know exactly what we're doing. So just some basic knitting techniques. I'm going to start with a slip knot. I'm going to go through this quickly. So just remember, you can always go back and rewind the class and watch it again. So for the slip knot, I lay my yarn out like this. Put your hand in the center of that loop, grab hold of the tail. And then if you hold the tail and your working yarn together and loop it back through, that will make a nice slip knot. Now, if you tie your slip knot differently than this, it's fine. There are many, many ways of tying a slip knot, but this is just a really easy way to do it. So lay your yarn out like this in a loop, put your short tail over the long working yarn, so it's short over long. Put your hand in the center, kind of sneak under that strand of yarn, grab hold of the tail, hold the working yarn and the tail together, and then just kind of loop that back through. And that will give you a slip knot. And as I said, there are many, many ways of tying a slip knot. And then you want to pop that on your needle and cinch it up. It should be snug, but you don't want to pull it tight like that. It should slide loosely on your needle. So you kind of want it shape around your needle, but you don't want it to be too tight. All right. And then once you do that, we're going to cast on. And I'm very quickly just going to cast on a few stitches for you. So the knitted on cast on starts like the knit stitch. You enter the stitch, wrap the yarn, bring that loop through, and then transfer it over. So there are also many, many ways of casting on. The knitted on cast on gives you a nice edge for most beginning knitted projects. And it's very similar to the knit stitch. So once you've learned the knitted on cast on, you're pretty much set to start the knit stitch as well. Okay. Any questions about the slip knot or about casting on? So you enter the stitch, wrap the yarn, bring the loop through, and then we're going to transfer it over to the left-hand needle. You can't just put it straight across like that. You have to pick it up from the back. So you jump over the stitch and pick it up from the back. And that will make sure that your stitches are not twisted. It's going to feel like you're twisting that stitch when you put it on, but it actually makes it not twisted. Kind of a little tricky thing there. Okay. Any questions so far?
I think we're doing good.
Doing good? All right. Let me just get a couple on here so I have enough to demonstrate with. Pretty cold out there today. You could use a nice knitted hat, I think. And these also make great holiday gifts. So if you're find yourself short a holiday gift or two, you can whip these hats up in no time. You still have plenty of time to make some nice knitted hats for holiday. Okay. All right, so now the knit stitch, I just want to review that quickly as well. So for the knit stitch, you enter the stitch and you do want to make sure that you enter the stitch going front to back this direction. So you want to go front to back this direction, and you want to make sure that you wrap your yarn going counterclockwise, so it should wrap around your needle this direction. Otherwise, you could end up with twisted stitches. Bring it through, transfer it over. So you enter the stitch, wrap your yarn, bring that loop through, transfer it over. Okay, so just 4 easy steps. 1, 2, 3, 4. And we do have our Knitting 101 class available for you to review if you're a very, very new knitter. So you can watch the Knitting 101 class. So I'm just demonstrating now. We're not really making the hat in class. I saw somebody asked how many to cast on. If you are going to start the hat along with me, you may cast on 27 stitches. I hope everyone had a chance to print a copy of the pattern. It's available with your class information. But for this hat, if you want to work along, you probably won't be able to make the whole hat during class, but we're casting on 27 stitches for the pattern, but I'm just casting on a few to demonstrate some stitches. I'm not really going to work, we won't have time to knit through 3 whole hats in an hour. Okay, so that's all. Just knit, just do the knit stitch. And then once you finish this entire row of knit, you'll just continue knitting every stitch on every row to make garter stitch for this hat. All right. Any questions about casting on, the slip knot, or how to do the knit stitch? So that's pretty much all you need to know to make this hat. And then I'm going to show you a little bit about seaming. Will be the next thing. You doing all right, Claire? Just finish this row then quickly.
We've got a general question for the knitted cast on. Yasmin says when they cast on and then do the first row afterward, it always makes the cast on stitches loose, which I feel like is the opposite problem that most people have.
Yeah, well, if your cast on does appear loose, you might want to pull it a little bit tighter, but I do caution you to do that because, like Claire said, usually the cast on has a tendency to become too tight. But with this hat also, you can probably end up hiding that in the seam. So I don't think I'd worry about that too much. Okay. All right, so once you've cast on all of your stitches, and once you have knitted your hat, so you're going to be knitting your hat, you're going to be knitting along, everything's going to look good, you're going to be having a wonderful time. And then once your hat gets to be, so big, maybe it looks like it's big enough, you're going to take this hat and you're going to wrap it around your head. Or maybe wrap it around your child's head or your friend, maybe you have a boyfriend or a girlfriend or husband or a wife or somebody. You're going to wrap it around their head and see if it's big enough to fit around their head. And it should fit a little snug because we do want our hats to feel a little snug. You don't want it to just fall off. So it doesn't tell us how big to make this hat. Now, most adults' heads are, I think, between about 19 inches, maybe up to 22 inches if you have a large head. So that might be a guide to start. But once your hat's about 16 or 17 inches, you might want to start, kind of testing it around your head just to see how far you need to go. So that's how you're going to get the size exactly right for whomever you're making the hat for. Any questions about that? It's very easy, but sometimes things that are easy do sound complicated. Does that sound pretty easy?
So I would say just if people are picturing how you're making the hat, you're actually knitting it side to side, right? So these garter
Yes.
ridges are going to end up vertically on your head.
Yes, exactly. So I've already bound this one off so I can show you how to do the seaming, but my knitting needle would be along this edge right here. And as I'm knitting it, it's going to get longer this direction. So as it's getting longer and longer and longer, that's when you can kind of fold it in half like this and then wrap it around your head. And you can see it is very stretchy. At this point, it's just a rectangle, so you could keep knitting this, making it longer, 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 and longer, and make it into a nice big scarf as well. So you could make a matching scarf to go with your hat, which could be very pretty. But yeah, so your knitting needles will be along this side. So kind of like this. This is the one I cast on and I was working on. And as I'm, adding stitches, it's going to get longer this direction. Does that make sense? Is that a good visual?
Yeah, I think that showed it off.
All right. And then once you've made your hat and it's as long as you need it to be and it fits your head, you will need to bind off. So let me demonstrate binding off now. Of course, yours will be bigger than this. I'm just doing this for demonstration purposes because, we don't have time to knit a whole hat. Okay. So when you're binding off, you're going to start by knitting 2 stitches. So 1, 2. So I've knitted 2 stitches, and then you take the first. So I have 1 and 2. You take the stitch, and you kind of stretch it, and you leapfrog over the other stitch, and it drops off the end. And it's not going to fall off or become unraveled because it's looped around that stitch. So it's looped right around there, like a little collar. And now I have to knit 1 more because I do need 2 stitches to knit another one. So I have 2 stitches. And another way you can do it is you can take it with your finger and you stretch it over. You don't want to let this fall off the end though. So you stretch it over, it leapfrogs over, it drops off the edge, maintaining this one on the needle. And now that one is looped around, so it's not going to become unraveled. It's bound off nicely. And then you're going to knit another one. So you always have to have 2 stitches. So I have 2. So you can either use your knitting needle and do it. You do want to guard this stitch and make sure it's not going to fall off. So I have 1 and 2. So you want to make sure you're guarding number 1. Number 2 jumps over it. Whoops, kind of slipped off my needle. It jumps over it, drops off the needle, and then you're maintaining this stitch on the needle. Okay, does that make sense? You want to see it a couple more times? And that is binding off. And that will keep your stitches from becoming unraveled. Okay. Any questions about binding off? You do want to make sure you're binding off very loosely because otherwise it can become extremely tight. So try to do it much looser than you feel is right, and you're probably okay. So you can see how I'm kind of pulling my stitches, kind of stretching them a little bit. Okay. And that is binding off. Any questions, Claire? How are we doing?
We've got a couple questions about things that we probably don't have time to cover in class. So I'm going to answer people directly in the chat here.
Okay, good idea. Yeah, we do have a lot to cover, so we're trying to cover as much as we can. So that's binding off. So once you bind off, you do want to leave a long tail for seaming. So I have this tail, which is pretty long. This one might be a little short. Give yourself a little extra tail. Don't cut it too short. And then we're going to pop this right onto a large-eyed blunt needle. So it should be large enough to be able to manage the thick yarn through the eye. And you do want it to be blunt. It's not sharp. We're not piercing the yarn. We're going in between the strands of yarn. Okay. So we're going to thread that on our needle. And then we're going to seam our hat together. We're going to seam it together. Now, when you're sewing with knitted fabric, when you're sewing knitted fabric together, you can see this is exactly right. There's exactly the same length. But sometimes when you're sewing, you're stretching one side and you don't realize it, and you're having a good time and everything. You're doing such a good job and everything's going well. And then when you get to the end, you're like, how in the world could that be possible? Because it was right when I started. I don't know what happened, but knitted fabric is very stretchy. So you could stretch it and it could, I mean, that's pretty extreme. You probably wouldn't do it quite that much, but it could happen. So whenever you're sewing knitted fabric, you want to use some clips and kind of clip them together to keep it from stretching. You can use these clips I have, which are quilter's clips, or you could use potato chip like clips that you would hold a potato chip bag shut with from your kitchen, or even a clothespin. Anything that's going to hold it tight would be fine. And for something like this, I would probably just use two. I would put one on the end and one in the middle, and that should be enough to make. And then you can kind of double check as you're going. And then to seam it, make sure you're getting a nice corner. And I'm going to show you the running stitch and then the whip stitch. So the running stitch just kind of goes zigzag back and forth. So I come this way. I'm going to enter my fabric from this side. I'm going to enter the next side of the fabric, pull it through, and then I'm going to enter the fabric from the other side. So I'm kind of going back and then back. And what I'm doing is I'm going under just 2 strands of yarn, and I'm going under just 2 strands of yarn, and that way my stitches are not going to go too deep. And I'm following these edge stitches. They look like knit stitches. And so I'm just going under them. I'm going to follow those. And that way my stitches will all be spaced out the same. So they're all the same depth, and they're all going to be spaced out the same. And that will make my seam look very neat. And because I'm using the same yarn that I made the hat out of, it will also look very neat. Okay, so that is the running stitch. Now the whip stitch, you always enter the fabric from the same side. So I'm entering the fabric from this side here that's closest to me. And then I jump over my seam, and I'm going to enter the fabric from the same side every time. And that is the whip stitch. So the running stitch is more of like a zigzag, and then the whip stitch is you're jumping over your fabric, over your seam, and always entering it from the same side. Okay. Any questions about the seam? I'm gonna try to just kind of hurry through this seam so I can get to the top. How we doing?
Which seaming method do you prefer, Darren?
I always use the running stitch. I like the running stitch. I feel like I'm going to kind of do a kind of a bad job and just kind of hurry up and get, but I really like the running stitch. I feel like it does better seam. Other people will, I've heard, love the whip stitch better. And so I'm going to kind of try to finish it quick so that I can get to the top. Okay. Which one do you like better, Claire?
Of these two, I would say the running stitch as well. Although maybe if you want to get fancy and do your seam with a different color and then use make that a feature on the outside of the hat, the whip stitch might look cool in that.
It might, it could. Okay, so then when you get to the top, see, I've kind of cut my tail a little short. Leave your tail a little longer. To close up the top, you just kind of want to, I guess it's kind of a running stitch kind of a thing. So you're just kind of zigzag it across, just kind of going in and out. Again, you don't want to go, you just want to kind of stay right along the top edge. Don't want to like all of a sudden go too deep. You don't want to take great big bites. You're trying to keep it pretty even. And I'm just going around the top. So you can see I'm just kind of going in and out of the fabric. And this is going to be bunched up at the top. So don't worry too much about it, but do try to keep it neat. And if you mess up your seam, you can always rip it out and try it again. Knitted fabric is very forgiving. So, okay, so there. And then you just pull it tight, really tight, and then kind of go through it again. And I would probably even, I don't usually like to tie knots, but when I'm cinching up the top of a hat like this, I would probably go ahead and say, go ahead and just loop it here and make that into a nice secure knot, which I'm not going to do because I want to be able to undo this easily to use this for another demonstration. But just pull it and make it into a really secure knot. And then once you've got that knot really secure, then we're going to weave in our ends. And that knot is not, it's just keeping it from coming keeping the top. You don't want the top to come loose and open up and show a hole there. And then you have to weave in your ends properly to secure it. So we're not really relying on that knot to secure our yarn. We're just kind of closing up the top. And then for weaving in the ends on garter stitch, I like to just kind of go in and out of the bumps. Like this, go down about 2-3 inches, and then go to the next row and then go back up about 2 to 3 inches. And we're not going to finish it with a knot. That knot was just to secure. And if you want to, maybe go back down a third time. So go up, down, and then you will be done. And then you kind of pull it tight and you snip that off with a scissor, which again, I don't want to do because I'm going to reuse this as a sample. And then you're 100% finished. All you do then is turn your hat the right side out. Now, a little bit about what's the right side and the wrong side. Garter stitch is a fabric that is reversible. So either side can be the right side or the wrong side. Sometimes when you're knitting, one side for some reason will look a little nicer than the other side. So, just pick whichever side looks the best and make that as your outside. And then you just roll it up. You can pop a pom-pom on the top if you want or not. So, and then that is all there is to making this first hat. Super easy, right, Claire? What do you think?
Yeah, I think that's a nice, easy way to make a hat.
Really
You don't have to
easy.
worry too much about shaping or anything.
Yeah, so this hat would be really warm because of the way the fabric has these ridges that kind of squish together. It's almost like an insulating, it's a little bit more insulating. And the fabric is a little thicker and a little spongier. If you're worried about a hat being like extra warm, you could go down a needle size. You could make this on a size 11 needle, and then that way it would be much more dense and more warm. So there are ways of making hats that you could use 100% wool. There's lots of different ways of making it extra warm. So any other questions, Claire? And then here's the other one that I finished, and this one has a pom-pom on. This one's a lot bigger. You can see this one ended up a lot bigger, and this one's a little smaller. So you can really make this hat that's well suited for anybody. So yeah, it's a very versatile way of making a hat. Okay. Any questions?
I think we're ready to go to our next hat.
Next one. All right, I'm getting my little swatch ready. I'm taking off my bind off so I can demonstrate a few things for the next one. Right now, the next hat is, we're going to be using ribbing across the bottom and then stockinette stitch for the body of the hat. And so this gives it a complete different look. So the other hat, which was garter stitch, you can see the difference. This one has a lot more texture. And so this one is much smoother, and then you have the more traditional ribbing at the bottom. We're going to talk a little bit on how we accomplished that. So for ribbing and for stockinette stitch, you are going to need to know how to make the purl stitch. So I'm going to demonstrate that real quick. So when you're doing a knit stitch, you enter the stitch from this side, enter the stitch, wrap the yarn, and you bring it through. So this is the knit stitch, so knit 2 right here. And then for the purl stitch, the first thing you're going to do for the purl stitch is you're going to bring your yarn from the front, or I'm sorry, from the back of your work, you're going to bring it to the front. So you can see how I did that. Make sure you're bringing it in between your knitting needles. You don't want to do anything silly like wrapping it around. So bring it in between your needles for ribbing. And then when you enter the stitch, instead of entering it this way, like for a knit, we're going to kind of dive into the stitch and enter it from above. You wrap your yarn counterclockwise, the same as with knitting, and then you're going to push that stitch back through. And you want to make sure that you're not twisting your stitches. So if you enter your stitch like this, so you enter it, dive into it from above, make the X, wrap your yarn counterclockwise, and then push it back through. You will not have any twisted stitches. All right, and now that I'm right here, I'm going to show you how to work knit 2, purl 2 ribs. So I started with 2 knits. I just did the 2 purls. So now I have to come to a full stop, open my needles. I have to pass my yarn from the front of my work to the back, in between the needles. And now I can do 2 knits. You can do as many knits as you need to. I'm only going to do 2. I'm doing knit 2, purl 2 ribs. So I did my knit 2, full stop, open my needles, bring the yarn back to the front so that I can do my 2 purls. Has anyone done ribbing before? Are we comfortable with this stitch? Full stop, reposition your yarn, do 2 knits. Full stop, reposition your yarn, 2 purls. Okay, any questions, Claire?
Looks like we've got a couple people that have done some ribbing, but they need practice, which we all continually need practice. So you're not alone there.
Yes, we all need practice. So practice is when the learning happens.
Yes. Yes. Yasmin says thinking their pearls are too loose. I think sometimes that happens when it's the transition between the stitches, like going from a knit to a purl. I always get a little bit of extra fabric right there, and it happens to the best of us.
Well, the purl stitch does tend to be a little looser. So you might just pull it a little tighter. I mean, you don't want to get crazy. Or usually by the time you're finished, though, the knitted fabric really wants to be even. And that looseness of the pearls, it does kind of spread out through the ribbing. And you'll kind of be surprised that it actually, evens out and looks pretty nice. Don't you find, Claire, or do you think is it a problem?
I don't have that problem in stockinette, but sometimes I notice, and it depends on like the type of yarn and the needle, so that the switch from knit to purl, like that last knit stitch going into the first purl stitch, there's a little bit of looseness there.
A little bit of
But
slack, but it
but
usually evens
blocking
out, don't you
usually.
think? By the time you finished your project, you've forgotten all about it and it looks fine.
Oh yeah, and especially if you're going to block it or wash it and leave it to dry, that will help as well.
Yeah. So, all right. So we reviewed our purl stitch, we reviewed our knit 2, purl 2 rib, and for this hat, we're going to be working stockinette stitch. So once you've done your ribbing, how much you could really do as much ribbing as you want. You could do a lot of ribbing and make a nice big roll up, or you might not want to do. Maybe you hate ribbing and you only want to do like 2 inches. You can do whatever you want. It's your hat. So once you've made the ribbing and you've made it to the length that you want it, I would say though, Claire, don't you think you need at least like 1 inch or 2 to keep it from rolling? How much ribbing do you think you can? What's the least amount of ribbing you think you could get away with? Like 1 inch?
Oh yeah, I would say at least 1 inch. Yeah.
At least 1 inch, and that way you don't want it to roll. But at least do 1 inch, but then you can really do with whatever you want after that. So once you do more than this is just for sampling. So for stockinette stitch, when you're working something flat, stockinette stitch, you're going to do all of your knits on one side. So I'm doing all of my knits. And then once you've finished the entire row, then you're going to do all of your purls on the other side. Now, if you're still learning and you're still practicing, when I was learning and practicing, sometimes I would get it mixed up, like which side was I on, the knit side or the purl side. So like if you're working along and you put down your work and you come back later, maybe you go have dinner or you take a nap and then you come back later and you pick it up, sometimes you might not be sure which side is which, or sometimes maybe you just pick up and start knitting and you don't really look to double check. And that can be a problem. So one thing I recommend, especially if you're still new, is to mark one side. So I just finished my knits here. So I'm going to put this stitch marker. And every time I see that stitch marker, I'll know I'm on the knit side. And that way I won't have to worry. So if I'm on the knit side, then I'll knit. And if I'm on the purl side, I'll purl. And that will help me. If I put this down and come back maybe tomorrow or maybe next week, that way I'll be sure I know exactly where I am. And then on the purl side, you're just going to purl that entire row. So knit one entire row and purl an entire row. And that is how you get stockinette stitch. Okay. Any questions about stockinette stitch? No, I'm just purling. I like stockinette stitch. I think it's very pretty. Any questions out there? I do love to answer questions. So if you have any questions, don't hesitate.
We did have a question going back to the ribbing. Marguerite clearly has some knitting experience and wanted to know if you usually do the ribbing in a smaller needle.
Well, you can. A lot of patterns will have you do the ribbing in a smaller needle. Ribbing has the tendency to kind of just pull in like this. And it's almost like elastic at the, it makes it a little bit springy and a little tighter. And if you do the ribbing on a needle that's a little, like you could do the ribbing on a size 11 and then the hat on a size 13, and that would make this even a little bit more squishy, a little bit more tight around your head. So that's nice. So that's something you can do. But for this beginning pattern, it's just having you do it all on the same size needle, just to make it a little easier for beginners. So it's a little less intimidating, but you could certainly do the ribbing on a smaller needle, and that will make it a little tighter and a little bit more snug. So that's a good idea, really. What would you do, Claire?
Yeah, I typically like doing the ribbing on a smaller needle just because it helps keep the hat on my head better. I've got a lot of hair to cover.
You do have a lot of hair to cover. Sometimes when I was first learning, especially, I would start my ribbing on a smaller needle. And then about here, I would realize, whoops, I forgot to change to my bigger needle. Did you ever do that? Did you ever forget to change to the bigger needle?
Oh, yeah, I've done that before.
Yeah. So if you do start it with a smaller needle, do remember, change it to the bigger needle before you start into the body of the hat. Other than that, I think it'll be fine. So, yeah, either way, whichever way you'd like. And then for this hat,
Quick question, Darren,
okay,
on the purl stitch. Could you demonstrate it holding the yarn in your right hand like you were an English style knitter?
absolutely. Let me just get this next sample set out. So as we are knitting this hat, we're knitting it flat. So we are knitting it back and forth. So this is what the purl side will look like. And then this is what the knit side looks like. And we're going to be knit, so you do your ribbing, and then we're going to work stockinette stitch. And then once we get up to here, we are going to add our stitch markers and then start our decreases. Okay. So let's quickly refer back to the pattern. And then, well, wait a minute. I'm kind of jumping ahead of myself. Claire, what did you just ask me to do with the yarn in my other hand? Was it the purl stitch?
Yes, show how to purl with the yarn
Let
in
me
your
do
right
that
hand.
before I forget to do that. All right. Now, there are many, many ways of holding the yarn. And you can hold it in your right hand, you can hold it in your left hand. Some people pick the yarn, some people throw it. There's so many different things you can do. So, and they're all right as long as you're not ending up with twisted stitches. So you want to make sure you're entering the stitch. So for the purl stitch, let me bring the yarn to the front. So that's the first thing. You bring your yarn to the front. You enter the stitch. So you go down, you're entering your stitch like this. And then I'm going to wrap it, still wrapping it counterclockwise. So even though I'm using my left hand, I'm wrapping it with my right hand now. I'm still creating the exact same stitch as if when I was using my left hand. So now I'm wrapping it with my right hand. So that way you want to make sure that your stitches are not being twisted. Okay. I didn't finish it there. So enter the stitch, wrap the yarn, bring it through. Okay, does that help? And some people I can't do this, but some people hold the yarn in their finger like this, and then they throw it around, and then they do it like, that's how you knit, isn't it, Claire, roughly? I mean,
A little bit like that, yes.
the way Claire does it is very beautiful and very elegant, but it is roughly like this. It's not nearly as clumsy. This is the extremely clumsy way, but I don't knit like this. But I'm just showing you, so you can just wrap it with your finger, or you can kind of throw it like that. And there are other ways too, so many ways. So, okay, was that helpful?
Yes, that was helpful. Thank you.
All right. Yes. I think I switched to knitting instead of purling there halfway through, didn't I? So, yeah, all right. All righty. So, all right, so let's look at the pattern to make sure I'm not skipping anything. So that is not the pattern. All right, so this one is the seamed hat. So it's very similar to the one we just did. Again, same amount of yarn, San Diego Navy in Hometown, 2 balls, but on lionbrand.com and michaels.com, you can get the Hometown bonus bundle. So you'd only need 1 because the bonus bundle is a double size. And if you're going to use Woolies Thick and Quick, you would want to get 2 of them. Knitting needle size 13. This one you need stitch markers, large-eyed blunt needle for finishing. And so the hat, we're going to cast on 46 stitches for this hat. We're going to start off immediately with ribbing. So knit 2, purl 2 ribbing, repeat from the asterisk to the last 2 stitches. You're going to knit the last 2 stitches. Row number 2, you're going to purl 2, knit 2, repeat from the last 2 stitches, and you're going to end up purling the last 2 stitches on the second row. So what you want to remember for ribbing, you're always stacking your purls on purls and your knits on knits. So if you're reading this and it seems confusing, just remember, once you establish row number 1, when you turn your work, you're always going to look at those stitches and you're going to put knits on top of knits and purls on top of purls. And that'll help keep it straight. So if you're looking at your stitches, make sure you can see that which ones are knits and which ones are purls. You're going to repeat rows 1 and 2 until it's about 4.5 inches long, or however long you would like it to be. So the next row, you're going to increase. So we're going to knit 22. We're going to knit into the front and then the back of the next stitch and repeat once from the asterisk. So we're going to add 2 stitches. So let me show you how to knit in the front and knit in the back. So that's an increase. We're going to take 1 stitch and we're going to turn it into 2 stitches. So we're going to increase by 1. So we enter the stitch just like normal, wrap your yarn, bring it through, and we're not going to take it off. We're not finished. We're going to take our needle and swing it around, and we're going to enter the back of that loop. Wrap the yarn and bring it through. Transfer it over. So I've taken this 1 stitch right here and turned it into 2. Show you that one more time. You start off just like normal, like nothing's happening. Don't worry. And then you don't take it off. And then we're going to swing around. And I'm going to go in the back loop. So you see how I'm under that back loop. Wrap the yarn, bring it through and take it off. All right, so that is knit in the front and the back of the loop. It's an increase by 1. So you take 1 stitch and turn it into 2. Any questions about that? Have we done that before? All right, so once you've done your increases, so just remember though, in the pattern, you're going to space that out. You're going to knit 22 and then knit in front and back of the loop, and then you're going to knit 22 and do it again. So you're spacing those out evenly spaced. And now you should take a moment to count your stitches, and you should have 48 stitches. And then we're going to change to stockinette stitch. We're going to purl one row, and then we're going to knit. And when you do that, you want to, whenever, I recommend, again, when you're on the knit side, go ahead and put a safety pin or some type of a marker, so that way you know which side is the knit side, just in case if you're still learning, you don't want to have to worry about that. Okay, you're going to repeat rows 1 and 2 for stockinette stitch until the piece measures about 9 inches from the beginning. Now, if maybe you don't want it to be that big, you could make it 8 inches, or you could make it 12 inches for a really slouchy hat. So this is your hat. You can do it however you want. Okay. And then we're going to shape the top of the hat. So we're going to do a little shaping. The first hat didn't have any shaping. So in this section, we're going to work stockinette stitch, and we're also going to add decreases to shape the top of the hat. We're going to use a stitch marker to keep track of where our decreases will go. And I'm going to show you how to add the stitch markers, which makes it very easy. Okay, very easy to keep track of where you are. So the next row, you're going to knit 8, place a stitch marker onto your needle, and you're going to repeat from the asterisk to the last 8 stitches. Knit the last 8 stitches, you'll have placed 5 stitch markers. Okay, let me just quickly get to the end of this row, and I'll show you exactly how to do that. Okay, so you're going to knit 8, and this is very easy. So you're going to knit 8. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So knit 8, and to place the stitch marker, you just pop it right on your needle. That's all you do to place a stitch marker. You just put it right on your needle, and then you're going to knit 8. You can continue doing it that way, and then you'll just put another one on. So while I'm doing this, I will take a kind of a pause and see if anyone has any questions. I know we're kind of covering a lot of information really fast, but I want to see if you have any questions. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Pop it right, just put it right on there and keep knitting. All right, and I want to show you what to do when you come back, because you're going to have to slip each marker when you come to it. Okay, so now on the back side, I'm going to be purling on this side, so purling. And you're not going to be doing any increases or anything, or decreases or anything on the back. You're just going to be purling straight on. So purling, and when I get to that stitch marker, I'm just going to transfer it from my left-hand needle to my right-hand needle. That's all. You want to make sure you're not knitting it into your fabric, so just transfer it over all on its own, and then keep working, and when you get to the next one, transfer it over. Right? Any questions on placing or slipping your stitch markers? Get to this next one, I'll show it again. Have we had experience working with stitch markers before? And just transfer that right over, right over. Okay. All right, any questions?
I think we're doing good, and we're down to the last 10 minutes here.
Oh my goodness, I can hardly believe it. Okay, so pretend I finished my row. Okay, so now I do want to show you how to do a knit 2 together. So you're going to be working with these stitch markers, and when you get 2 stitches before the marker, you're going to knit 2 together. So a knit 2 together, you just, instead of entering the first stitch like that, you skip the first one and you jump right through there, go through both stitches and knit them together, and then you transfer the stitch marker over, and then you work to your next one. So you have 2 stitches before the next one. But I'm just going to do a couple knit 2 togethers just so you can see them. So you just go through 2 stitches at the same time, wrap your yarn, bring it through, Go through 2 stitches, wrap your yarn, and bring it through. Okay. All right, let's quickly look at the pattern. Okay. So after we've placed our stitch markers, we're going to repeat until we get them all placed. When we do our purl row, we're going to slip the markers as we come to them. All right, so we're going to knit to 2 stitches before the marker. We're going to knit the next 2 stitches together, slip the marker, and repeat until you have slipped the last marker. And then you're going to knit to the last 2 stitches and knit the last 2 stitches together. You've decreased 6 stitches along this row, and you should have 42 remaining. You're going to purl on the way back, slipping the markers as you come to them, repeating rows 1 and 2 until you have just 6 stitches remaining. You're going to cut your yarn, leaving a 25-inch long tail, and we're going to use that for seaming. Okay. So I've got right to that point right here. I'm going to cut my yarn. I left a nice long tail this time. Put it on. And then what you're going to do is, we're not binding off. We're going to take this darning needle and we're going to go through each stitch and slip it on the darning needle. Drop your stitch marker off. We don't want to keep the stitch markers at this point. And then we're similar to the other one, we're just going to cinch it up really tight. I'm going to turn the hat inside out. And then we are just going to seam it together. So you can do either the whip stitch or the running stitch. And if you get really ambitious, you can research mattress stitch, which we don't have time to show today, but that's also another stitch for seaming that's good for future learning. So that'll give you something to kind of an independent learning opportunity. All right. Any questions? Jump to the next one. Now the next hat is also, it's very similar. It looks pretty much the same, but it's knitted in the round. Okay, so with this one, we're going to cast on our stitches and we need a 16-inch circular needle. So we're going to cast on our stitches on a 16-inch circular needle. Okay. And to join in the round, once you get cast on, we're going to place a stitch marker to mark the beginning. You're going to hold it so that your working yarn is in your right hand. And then you want to make sure that your stitches are not twisted. So you want to lay it out nice, and you want to make sure that your stitches are all laying out flat. So if it looks like that, obviously that's twisted. So you want to make sure they're not twisted. And then once you knit the first stitch, then it's joined. And you want to make sure it's joined, but when you try to pull it apart, you see it's got a strand there. And so I'm going to do knit 2. And then purl 2. So I'm going to work my ribbing. Okay, just like the other ribbing we worked. You have to stop, reposition your yarn in between your needles, and then go. So that was joining. That happened so fast. You want to see it again, or have we done that before? What do you think, Claire?
I think we could probably show it again really quickly.
Okay, we'll get back to that point. Now, the thing about joining it is, it's so easy. It's going to happen so fast, you won't even know it happened. So that's the good news. It's not hard. All right. So you do want to take 1 second. You want to lay it out. And you want to make sure that everything looks like it's nice and straight. Put your stitch marker on to mark the beginning. Make sure your working yarn is in your right hand. Enter the stitch, wrap the yarn, bring it through, and it's joined. It's so easy. And you're going to feel like there's something you're missing, but there's really not. Now, one thing I will caution you about, because it's only joined by one strand of yarn, there is the opportunity to still make a mistake. So this could still get twisted in your hand because that one strand of yarn is kind of like a hinge and it could still get twisted. So after you go all the way around, you knit all the way around, and when you get back to the beginning, right here where your stitch marker is, you want to stop everything, you want to lay it down, you want to make sure everything is perfectly square and laid out nice, make sure nothing is twisted. And then when you start your second round, you're locked in place. So the good news is if you did it correctly, you don't have to worry. It's perfect. The bad news is if you did it wrong, then it's wrong and you really can't fix it at that point. So it is important at the beginning of your second round to stop again and double check. Okay. Have you ever made that mistake, Claire?
Oh, yes. Thankfully, I have caught it when I haven't been too far into the piece, so it wasn't too painful.
Yeah, when I first started knitting in the round, nobody told me. They said, make sure you don't twist it, and if you don't twist it, you'll be fine. But nobody told me that it could twist before the second round, and I got in trouble a couple times, and I couldn't figure out why. So, all right. So now that we've joined in the round, and you do want to make sure you're using a 16-inch circular for knitting in a hat in the round, because if it's bigger than that, it's not going to fit on your head. It's not going to work out in your benefit. Okay. Now there is a trick. We're going to do ribbing, and then we're going to do stockinette stitch. Now, stockinette stitch in the round is a little bit different than stockinette stitch flat. When you're working stockinette stitch in the round, you're going to knit every stitch all the way around for the entire length of the stockinette stitch. And the reason that is because you're only working on the front of the hat. You're never, ever turning it to the purl side because we're going round and round and round like a spiral. We're not knitting back and forth. So remember, stockinette stitch in the round is a little bit different. It's actually quite a bit easier. It's so much easier. So when you're knitting stockinette stitch in the round, you're going to knit every stitch and you're going to love it. It's my favorite thing. It's so much fun and it's so easy. Okay. All right, so just let's quickly look at this pattern. We don't have much to learn on this one, so we've already learned most of it. We've already learned how to do ribbing. We've already learned how to do our increase. We've already learned how to do stockinette stitch, and then stockinette stitch in the round. It's so much easier. We're going to shape the top of the hat. So we've already learned how to place our stitch markers for our decreases. We've already learned how to do our decrease by knitting two together. The next round we're going to knit. We've learned how to slip our markers as we're going. So easy. And we're going to use double pointed needles, and we've already learned, we didn't learn how to do that, did we? So now we have to learn how to do double pointed needles. So now what's going to happen is you're going to cast on, you're going to knit your ribbing, you're going to do your increase at the beginning, you're going to do stockinette stitch in the round, which means knit every stitch. I ran out of yarn, so I had to finish it off with this yellow. So you can do it, and you could do stripes the whole way up. You could do whatever you want. And as you're knitting on your 16-inch circulars, you see what's going to happen. As it's getting smaller and smaller, these stitches don't fit around 16 inches anymore. So once you start doing your decreases, eventually it's not going to fit around. So we're going to have to switch to double pointed needles. And the way we switch to our double pointed needles is we just start knitting with our double pointed needles. And we're just going to put a few on each one. And I do recommend that you knit as much of the hat as you can on your 16-inch circular. And when it starts to feel a little uncomfortable, that's when it's time to switch to the double points. Okay. And then you're just going to just knit them right on to the double points, just like I'm doing. Very easy. If you have any questions, please let me know. Double pointed needles do take a little practice. And you want to end up with 3 double pointed needles holding your stitches. And then we're going to use a 4th one to actually as our working needle. Okay. I'm just knitting them, nothing fancy, and I'm slipping my markers in place as I'm going. And you want to make sure, see, here's my marker. I'm going to slip my marker, and you do want to make sure you have a stitch to hold those markers in place. Otherwise, they'll just fall right off. So now I've got 3 double-pointed needles holding my stitches, and they are, it's kind of in the shape of a triangle. And then I'm going to use my next one as my working one, and I'm going to knit 2 together, which is where I was in the pattern. Slip my marker, knit 1, knit 2 together, slip my marker, knit 1, whoops. Okay. And then I'm going to turn it this way, and I'm going to use my next right here. Now, in between these double-pointed needles, there's a space, and you want to make sure you're pulling that tight because you don't want it to have a loose space there. So whenever I switch to the next double point, I put really tight, not crazy, but you do want to put nice and snug. That should be a nice tight stitch, slip the marker. And then also the second one after that, I put a little tight. And we have a class, knitting in the round, which shows how to knit in the round several ways. So if you want to review that for a more thorough demonstration, I do recommend that, right? Any questions, Claire? A little tight when you're going to the next needle.
I was going to say yes. We've got some questions on different types and methods of knitting in the round. And since we are just past the end of class now, we probably don't have time to cover much more. But I think that Carrie linked to that class in the chat then a couple messages ago. So you can watch that on the Michael's YouTube channel for more in-depth info on the different ways to knit in the round.
Okay. And then you just keep knitting until you get down to just a few stitches left. You cut your yarn and you take a darning needle and you go through the last few live stitches and sink it up tight, and then do a little knot like I showed you, and then weave in your ends. That knot is just to keep the top cinched up. You want to make sure you're weaving in your ends for a nice secure finish, because that, if you only tie a knot, that will betray you and it will unravel. All right. Okay, that's pretty much the end of class. Do we have any questions?
I'll go ahead and put all of the hat patterns in here one more time in case you need them before we leave.
And if anyone does have questions, once you start practicing, feel free to contact me on Facebook. You can just search for my name and you'll see my picture. Send me a direct message. I'm always happy to follow up and answer questions. And you can contact me on Instagram. Maybe Claire will put my Instagram name in the chat. It's Mr. Woolly Bear. Send me a direct message and I'm more than happy to follow up and answer any questions. Usually, once you start working, you'll have questions. You might not think you have any right now, but if you do, please contact me. I'm always glad to help. Okay. All right, anything else?
And then all of the materials you used in class, like the yarn and the needles and everything, that's all available at Michael's, right?
Yep, michaels.com. You can get everything you need. Stitch markers, the double points, everything. Everything's available there.
All righty. Thanks everyone for joining us. We hope you have fun making all of your hats. Practice, practice, practice. Even just 10 to 15 minutes a day is perfect.
Yep, that's where the learning happens. All right, have a great night. Thanks for coming to class.